Generally, when we're talking about a home inspection, we're talking about an inspection a buyer pays an inspector to do in the first week or so of a real estate purchase contract. So the home inspector's job is to go in there and give the buyer a lot of information about the house, its current condition, the structure, the systems of the house. They're going to check everything out and give the buyer an overview. Something that people don't always realize is that nothing is actually required off of this home inspection. The seller's often concerned, oh no, what if this or that is not up to code, and the home inspection happens. The home inspection is just for the buyer's information. And almost every house, if it's not a brand new house, is going to have a long list of horrifying things to make you want to back out of the deal until you realize after your third house that, oh, every house is like this. But that's the inspector's job. You want them to tell you all the things about the house and the systems that you wouldn't know by just walking through it. But pretty much any house out there is going to have a long list. So when we get the information, we need to have a way to filter through it and decide what's really a concern, what's not. So this has to be considered from the buyer's point of view and the seller, because the seller needs to know if there are issues on the home inspection that the buyer finds and says, hey, we want you to fix this, this, and this. The seller needs to ask themselves, okay, is the next buyer and the next buyer and the next buyer going to ask me for the same things? Because if the seller doesn't agree and the buyer exercises their option to terminate during that option time frame, then the seller may end up just running into the same problem with the next buyer. Unless the buyer's being really nitpicking, saying, hey, we want you to do everything off the list. The seller's going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And they'll probably be able to sell the house to someone else who's not going to require that. But generally speaking, the home inspector is there as kind of a jack of all trades to point your attention to things like, hey, you may want to have a roofer look at the roof. Hey, you might want to have an HVAC guy, look at the air conditioning. Hey, you might want to have a foundation company look at that. Or they might say everything looks pretty good, but there's settling cracks here, there's a small leak here. And often it's not huge deal killing things. It's just things that the buyer may want to just be aware of, or they may want to ask the seller to address a few things. The seller will often agree to address some of them, maybe not all of them, and the deal goes forward. But nothing is actually required from the seller. The only leverage the buyer has is because it's generally done during their option time frame, and they could terminate if things don't go their way. But the buyer also needs to consider that they may not like the inspection on this house, but the next house is likely going to have a similar inspection. And of course, there are always exceptions where they find horrifying things and you pay for the home inspection and you're glad that he saved you from lots of trouble. But generally, that's how it works. And there's more to understand, but that will get you started.